As ever, it remains amateur hour at Meghan Markle's brand as ever. In fact, it has gotten obviously worse since Netflix left. As Meghan Markle attempts to sort of try and get the brand to work, she's decided to add her own aesthetic.
Everything seemed to crash down for Meghan this week, all at once. Problems were hitting from every direction, across completely different stories, and somehow every single one started blending into the same bigger conversation. What looked at first like random bad headlines suddenly started feeling way more connected. And when you step back and look at everything together, it stops looking like a normal rough week and starts looking like deeper cracks that have been sitting under the surface for a long time. There were reportedly 137,000 unsold jars sitting around, a rebrand rollout that somehow launched with a typo right on the homepage, and a promo video that instantly turned into internet comedy material. Then came the Mother's Day tribute that left people more confused than emotional.
A new as ever promo video on Monday afternoon, and the entire internet had the same reaction inside 9 minutes.
While old palace bullying allegations popped back into British headlines again. On top of that, debate around the children's royal titles started heating up all over social media and news panels. Every story landed during the exact same stretch of time, and together they pushed one major question back into the spotlight. Is this whole image starting to slip under pressure? So today, we're breaking down every part of this carefully, not just to throw criticism around, but because each issue connects to a much bigger pattern. When several things fail at once, it usually points to something deeper happening behind the scenes. The real story is not just that mistakes happened.
Has a right to know that at the same time that Meghan was making all of these outrageous and untrue accusations about the British royal family, her treatment of staff behind the scenes was
It's why they keep happening in ways that all feed the same public doubts. The typo on the homepage, the borrowed kitchen setup, the reported 2.6-unit daily sales pace. None of these looked like isolated slip-ups anymore. They started feeling like warning signs pointing toward bigger problems with planning, branding, and public trust. And honestly, the rebrand itself already had people raising eyebrows before this chaotic week even started. Before the promo video got mocked, before the Mother's Day reactions, and before social media started piling on, the launch alone was already sending signals that something felt off. About a year ago, Meghan introduced As Ever as a very personal passion project. The branding leaned heavily into authenticity and emotional connection.
Crappier than ever. That is As Ever after its latest rebrand from Meghan Markle.
In interviews and promotional material, she made it clear this was supposedly not just another celebrity lifestyle business trying to cash in on fame. The entire message centered around it being personal, grounded, and real. Her garden, her kitchen, her recipes, her hosting style. That was the image being sold to the public. The whole pitch was built around warmth and closeness, almost like inviting people directly into her everyday life. The idea was simple: beautiful food and lifestyle content that still felt relatable instead of overly polished or out of touch. But now, critics and online commentators are starting to question whether the image being presented actually lines up with what people are seeing unfold publicly. And that growing disconnect is becoming harder to ignore as more headlines keep stacking up. The whole idea behind the brand was supposed to feel relaxed and personal, like a stylish friend sharing homemade favorites with you over coffee on a quiet Sunday morning. That cozy image was a huge part of the marketing from the very beginning. And at first, it actually worked.
Meghan's aura, I can tell you what the reading is. I mean, it's a dark cloud. She's a downer. She's greedy. She's a
The jam jars with the handwritten labels, the personal storytelling, and the polished lifestyle vibe grabbed massive media attention almost instantly. People were genuinely curious about it. A lot of buyers jumped in early just to see what the hype was about. For a short time, the launch looked like it had serious momentum behind it. Social media was talking, Headlines were rolling out, and the branding looked polished enough to keep people interested. But then the sales numbers reportedly started leaking online, and that's when the conversation changed fast. Reports claimed around 137,000 boxes of fruit spread were still sitting unsold in storage. Even more damaging, the brand was allegedly averaging only around 26 sales a day across the operation. Online critics wasted no time pulling out calculators and breaking down the numbers publicly.
So Meghan Markle is back in the news. She's all over the royal news today because apparently her brand, it's already over. It was over before it started. It was a quickie. You know, Meghan Markle, she's known for a quickie on the casting couch. Her brand was also a freaking quickie. So she gave an interview to a US business magazine. I believe it was Fast Company. And in the interview, Meghan Markle said she might never restock her jam, or she might wait till 2026. She wants to step back and assess As Ever, which is the name of her brand. She wants to step back, gather data. She wants to gather data and figure out exactly what As Ever could be.
The math started spreading everywhere, and people quickly pointed out that at that pace, it could reportedly take years to clear inventory that already had expiration dates attached to it. And food products are not something you can just leave sitting around forever while trying to fix branding problems. The tea line reportedly struggled too. Products like the hot toddy kits sounded cute and trendy during interviews, but curiosity apparently didn't turn into strong sales. Then there were the baking mixes connected to the Netflix partnership, which quietly disappeared after reports claimed Netflix backed away from that side of the project earlier this year. That suddenly opened even more questions about leftover inventory and products that may have already been produced and stored away with nowhere to go. That's why the rebrand raised so many eyebrows. When a company changes direction this dramatically after barely a year, people usually don't see it as bold confidence or creative evolution. Most audiences read it as damage control, a reaction to something not working behind the scenes. Strong brands normally grow outward naturally when things are going well. They slowly add more products, strengthen their image, and build trust over time. They don't usually scrap the core identity and rename everything before the original version even fully settles with the public. So once the rebrand arrived, one giant question immediately started floating around online. What went wrong badly enough to make all of this necessary? And that question was already hanging in the air before the promo video even dropped, before the website officially launched, before people saw the campaign visuals, before social media reactions exploded. Then the promo video finally arrived, and instead of calming the conversation down, it pushed the doubts even louder. Now let's get into the promo video, because this is where the week really started spinning out fast. This was the moment the online mockery hit its peak, and where the difference between the brand's authentic image and what people actually saw became way harder to ignore. The video dropped on a Monday afternoon across Meghan's Instagram, the official As Ever account, and the company website, all at the same time.
Attempting to steer As Ever into positive waters, and I would argue failing pretty miserably at it. Her latest series of pictures and videos and images are more pretentious than ever before in a time where people are paying more than ever for simple things like gas and groceries. Meghan Markle is telling you that her brand is expensive, but yet cheap at the same time.
Everything about it screamed high-end luxury branding, soft piano music, dramatic lighting, carefully placed shadows, slow cinematic shots. It followed the exact style luxury companies use when they want people to believe they are not just buying a product, but buying a lifestyle and a certain image of themselves. The campaign mainly focused on two products: orange, marmalade, and raspberry preserve. But almost immediately, attention shifted away from the products themselves and onto the presentation surrounding them. Within about 90 minutes, fashion bloggers online had already identified nearly every outfit Meghan wore in the video. People started breaking down every pose, every camera angle, every styling choice frame by frame. One word kept showing up again and again in reactions online: engineered. Viewers felt like nothing in the video looked natural or spontaneous. The opening scene especially caught attention. Meghan appeared barefoot, sitting cross-legged on a kitchen counter beside a tray of cookies while flipping through a book. The visuals were clearly trying to create a cozy, effortless atmosphere. Warm lighting, soft colors, relaxed body language. The goal seemed to be making viewers feel like they were getting a peek into a calm and genuine home life. But then reports started spreading that the kitchen shown in the video was allegedly not even her real kitchen. According to online discussion and media reports, her actual kitchen reportedly has a much darker farmhouse-style look that didn't match the soft luxury image the campaign wanted to present. Because of that, another property was allegedly used for the shoot instead. And honestly, that detail mattered way more than people first realized. This entire brand was built around the idea of authenticity. The marketing constantly pushed the image that Meghan was sharing her real passions, her real routines, her real home environment, and her personal lifestyle with the audience. So when viewers found out the heart of this supposedly personal brand may have been filmed somewhere else, critics argued it damaged the whole message the company had been trying to sell from the start.
What data is Meghan Markle gathering? Is she like in the mainframe gathering data? I think only a handful of people bought the jam and jelly, and most of them were journalists who just wanted to eviscerate and look at what the ingredients were. And the ingredients were probably toxic. In my opinion, I would not be eating her jams, jellies, and dog biscuits.
Then came the second major look that sent social media into full debate mode. Meghan appeared wearing a floor-length ivory halter gown with an open back, identified by fashion watchers as the Stella McCartney dress from her royal wedding reception. She paired it with an oversized cream blazer while holding a glass of champagne and promoting marmalade at the same time. The styling choice instantly confused a lot of viewers. The gap between luxury red carpet fashion and jars of fruit spread felt so huge that even outlets usually friendly towards celebrity branding struggled to explain how it all connected. Online, the most common reaction wasn't anger or excitement. It was straight-up confusion about what exactly the campaign was trying to sell in the first place. The third outfit is where the internet really went wild. Meghan appeared in a deep red silk slip dress with a plunging neckline while pouring champagne in dramatic slow motion. The entire visual style suddenly felt less like a food brand and more like a luxury perfume commercial or some glossy late-night movie scene. Almost instantly, comment sections across social media started making the exact same comparison over and over again. People weren't even talking much about the preserves anymore. The conversation completely shifted toward the styling, the mood, and how disconnected everything felt from the actual products being promoted. Critics online kept asking why a brand supposedly centered around homemade comfort and simple kitchen warmth was presenting itself like a high-fashion fantasy campaign instead. Then came the moment that really exploded across the internet. Meghan leaned back, tilted her head, closed her eyes, and slowly moved her hands across herself while the camera stayed locked in dramatic slow motion.
I think she's sort of starting to lose interest as the brand isn't doing well. I think she's kind of like, "Oh, I don't want to take the time. I just want to get this out. I just want to get this sold." And I get it, but like she wants to apparently run a multi-million-dollar, if not billion-dollar empire, and she ain't going to do it like this.
That clip spread everywhere within hours, and one question completely took over the reactions online. What does any of this have to do with jam? That single reaction captured the confusion people were already feeling throughout the whole campaign. Viewers weren't necessarily upset about glamorous visuals themselves. The issue was that the branding and the products felt like they belonged to two completely different worlds. But one specific detail pushed the criticism even further. Throughout the entire promo video, Meghan never actually eats the products. She holds the jars carefully, lifts them toward the camera, studies them, and presents them almost like luxury accessories. But she never opens the jar, never tastes the jam, and never drinks the tea either. That stood out because this brand was supposedly built around real enjoyment, homemade recipes, comfort, hosting, and authentic food experiences. Instead, The products ended up feeling more like background props in a fashion photo shoot than items someone genuinely uses in everyday life. And for a company pushing authenticity so heavily, that absence became hard for viewers to ignore. One viral comment especially took off online because people felt it perfectly described the vibe they were getting from the footage. The comment said, "She looked like someone wandering through a stranger's mansion pretending they own it." The reason that line spread so fast wasn't just because it sounded dramatic. It spread because a lot of viewers felt it explained the strange disconnect they had been noticing in almost every scene of the campaign. Then the website launch added another layer of problems right on top of the promo backlash. And honestly, many of those issues looked completely avoidable with basic quality checks before launch day. The redesigned As Ever website arrived with a dark and moody aesthetic that many people said felt closer to an expensive fashion catalog than a cozy spring food brand. Heavy shadows, muted colors, oversized editorial-style photography, complicated navigation menus. Everything about the design seemed focused on looking massive and luxurious. But that created another problem almost immediately. The website structure looked like it belonged to a giant lifestyle empire with endless product categories and years of established inventory. In reality, the company reportedly still had only a fairly limited range of products, trying to build momentum. That mismatch between the image being projected and the actual scale of the business became another thing. Critics online started picking apart fast. Critics started pointing out the contradiction almost immediately. A lot of people felt the branding was trying harder to sell a fantasy about what the company wanted to become instead of showing what the brand actually was right now. And once reports about the sales struggles started spreading online, that gap between the polished image and the reported reality became much harder for audiences to ignore seriously. Then another issue started making rounds online fast. The homepage featured a recipe that referred to the product as raspberry jam, even though the company officially markets it as raspberry fruit spread. Two completely different names for the same product appeared on the same website, and screenshots spread across social media within minutes. For a company working so hard to present itself as premium, polished, and detail-focused, that kind of inconsistency raised even more questions about what was happening behind the scenes. And then came the typo that really sent the internet into full roast mode. In large text displayed prominently on the website, the phrase read, "You're beautiful," spelled as Y-O-U-R, beautiful. A grammar mistake so basic that even standard writing software usually catches it automatically. The typo was corrected quickly after people noticed it, but by then screenshots had already exploded across every major platform. On its own, maybe it would have just been a small, embarrassing mistake people forgot about after a day or two. But because it happened during the exact same week as all the other criticism, the typo suddenly became something much bigger online. People weren't only laughing at the grammar mistake itself. Critics used it as a symbol for what they believed were deeper issues with the operation behind the brand. Online discussions started focusing on rushed decision-making, weak quality control, and the apparent lack of strong oversight before major launches went public. That's what made the typo hit harder than normal. When a brand's whole identity is built around precision, elegance, careful presentation, and the idea that every detail has been thoughtfully curated, even a small mistake suddenly carries way more weight. A typo sitting in giant letters on the homepage of a major relaunch doesn't just look sloppy. To critics, it starts signaling that the polished image might not be matching the actual execution happening behind the curtain. There's also one more important detail from the promo video that a lot of people noticed.
She's still freaked out after all the stock reveals in January. And I think those were true. And I think she's freaking out about it. And I think they've wasted a bunch of their money in her as ever stock and it's not moving. And again, there was a report from the New York Post that there's some sort of warehouse for Netflix, like a PR room where it's just stacked with as ever goods. And they're just basically giving it away to staff members who want.
For a brand constantly talking about togetherness, hosting, shared meals, family warmth, and bringing people together through food. The campaign strangely showed almost none of that. There were no dinner parties, no friends sitting around laughing, no family moments, and no scenes of guests actually enjoying the products together. Nobody was shown tasting the jam socially or sharing tea in any natural setting. Instead, nearly every shot focused only on Meghan alone in carefully styled outfits, walking through empty rooms, holding jars, or carrying champagne glasses. That created another disconnect people online kept bringing up. The products were supposed to represent comfort, connection, and shared experiences, but the campaign presented them in complete isolation instead. And for many viewers, that lonely atmosphere ended up clashing heavily with the warm image the brand claimed it wanted to sell. The biggest issue critics kept pointing out was that the entire aesthetic seemed to communicate the complete opposite of the values the brand claimed to represent. Once people started noticing that disconnect, social media could not stop talking about it. Viral posts and reaction videos spread everywhere, making sure the conversation kept growing bigger throughout the week. Then came the Mother's Day situation, which created a completely separate wave of backlash all on its own. And because both controversies were happening at the exact same time, the pressure around everything suddenly doubled. In the United States, Mother's Day fell on May 10th. Over the years, Meghan has spoken publicly many times about how important her mother, Doria, has been in her life. In interviews, documentaries, and written pieces, she has repeatedly described Doria as her biggest support system and one of the strongest influences in her personal journey. Doria was there at the royal wedding, appeared during major family milestones, and has long been presented as a central figure in Meghan's public story. That relationship has been one of the most emotionally important parts of Meghan's public image for years, which is why people paid very close attention to how Mother's Day was handled this time around. On the morning of Mother's Day, visitors to the As Ever website reportedly saw luxury candles connected to Archie and Lilibet's birthdays being promoted for sale. What people didn't initially see was a public tribute to Doria herself on a day specifically focused on honoring mothers. Later on, a tribute to Doria did appear, but it arrived inside a Disneyland photo carousel, mostly centered around Archie's birthday celebration, rather than around Doria directly. The image that spread the fastest online showed Doria at Disneyland interacting with a Mickey Mouse character during a park greeting, with Mickey appearing to kiss her hand. Some viewers thought the moment looked sweet and playful, fitting for a family trip to Disney. Others felt it seemed surprisingly casual, considering how strongly Meghan has always described her mother as the foundation of her emotional support system. That contrast became another major talking point online. People kept focusing on the sequence of events, luxury birthday candles being promoted first on Mother's Day morning, followed later by a Disney-themed photo as the main public acknowledgement of Doria. For critics, the optics simply did not land the way the brand likely intended. Then another layer got added to the conversation when British media reports began circulating claiming Doria may no longer be living full-time at the Montecito property. Some reports mentioned alleged disagreements involving parenting styles and family dynamics, although none of those claims have been officially confirmed, and they should absolutely be treated carefully and cautiously. Those reports could easily be inaccurate or exaggerated. But regardless of whether the rumors are true, the reason they gained traction so quickly comes down to how heavily the close Meghan and Doria relationship has been emphasized publicly for years. Because that bond has been presented so consistently as uniquely strong and deeply personal, even speculative stories suggesting tension suddenly create a noticeable disconnect for audiences who have followed that narrative closely. And during a week already packed with criticism, confusion, and non-stop online debate, even unconfirmed rumors started carrying much heavier attention than they normally might have received. Once people start questioning whether the public image matches the private reality, every small detail suddenly gets examined way more closely. And for many online commentators, A Disneyland mascot photo on Mother's Day wasn't enough to quiet those growing doubts. Then another controversy came roaring back into headlines at the exact same time. The palace bullying allegations resurfaced again in British media this week, and because they landed during the middle of all the other brand criticism, they instantly became part of the same larger public conversation. Whether the timing was coincidence or not, the impact was impossible to ignore. The stories all blended together into one massive news cycle focused on leadership, image, and questions about what may really be happening behind the scenes. The complaints from former palace staff regarding working conditions within the Sussex household have never fully disappeared from public discussion. Over the years, the allegations have been denied, disputed, and heavily debated, while confidentiality agreements connected to palace employment have limited how much information ever became public. Because of that, the full internal picture has never officially been released. What the public mostly sees are fragments of information, media leaks, anonymous accounts, and the visible pattern of staff departures that unfolded over time. One thing royal commentators repeatedly point toward is the consistency of those departures. According to various reports over the years, several experienced advisors, communications professionals, and senior staff members allegedly left after disagreements over strategy, public direction, or internal decision-making. Some departures reportedly happened under difficult circumstances, while others were never publicly explained in much detail. That pattern has become one of the biggest recurring talking points surrounding the Sussex operation, both during the palace years and afterward. And now, critics are drawing direct connections between those staffing issues and the commercial mistakes currently getting attention around the brand. The argument many critics make is actually pretty simple. Strong professional teams are usually there to catch problems before they become public embarrassments. They review website copy before launch day. They question campaign direction. They test whether products actually match the audience. They flag issues with branding consistency, pricing, messaging, and inventory before problems spiral outward. When experienced professionals either leave or reportedly are not fully listened to, critics argue those safety checks start breaking down.
But Meghan Markle, she's done. It's, only May of 2025, and she wants to wait till 2026 to restock. I'm here to tell you, if the brand were successful, they would be rolling out more products. This tells us there is no demand. The manufacturers don't want to put together more products, more boxes, more components, all of those little pieces and bits and bobs. They don't want to do it because clearly there's no demand.
That's when typos slip onto major homepage launches. Branding messages become confusing. Expensive promo shoots feel disconnected from the products, and large amounts of inventory reportedly start piling up without clear momentum behind them. To be fair, the bullying allegations themselves remain disputed and have never been formally proven in any public legal setting. That distinction matters. But critics also point out that the broader pattern of high-profile staff turnover is visible and well documented over the years. And for many observers, connecting repeated professional departures with an operation now facing multiple avoidable public mistakes does not feel like a huge leap in logic, especially during a week where almost every headline seemed to reinforce the same growing question about leadership, management, and whether the polished public image still matches the reality unfolding behind the scenes. A lot of critics see this as a pretty straightforward cause and effect situation. And there's another important layer underneath all of this that many reports barely touched on, even though it may explain why the backlash hit so hard. This campaign launched during a time when many ordinary people are under serious financial pressure. Food prices have stayed high, energy bills continue squeezing households, and rent and mortgage costs remain stressful for a huge number of families. After several difficult economic years, people are paying very close attention to how brands present themselves and whether they feel connected to everyday reality. That's why the timing of this campaign became such a problem for many viewers. Into that environment came glossy promo videos featuring expensive designer gowns, dramatic champagne shots in slow motion, cinematic luxury visuals, and premium-priced artisan fruit spreads. For critics, it didn't just feel overly polished. It felt disconnected from the lives most people are actually living right now. And that kind of disconnect can become very difficult for a brand to recover from once audiences fully notice it. The original message behind "As Ever" was supposed to make Meghan appear relatable, grounded, and connected to simple things people genuinely enjoy: family meals, hosting guests, comfort food, warm kitchens, and everyday moments shared with people you care about. But the campaign many viewers actually saw communicated something completely different. Instead of cozy and approachable, critics argued the brand came across as distant, hyper-curated, and almost unreal. The domestic lifestyle being presented felt so luxurious and staged that many people struggled to see themselves anywhere inside it. Online reactions especially focused on the contrast. A borrowed filming location, outfits reportedly worth thousands of dollars, luxury styling, and products priced far above regular grocery store alternatives, all combined into one bigger criticism. Why would average consumers connect emotionally to something that feels so far removed from their everyday lives? That growing gap between the brand's stated identity and its visible execution is what many observers believe sits at the center of the entire problem. And critics argue that changing logos, redesigning websites, or tweaking slogans cannot fix that deeper issue if the audience no longer believes the core message itself. Then there are the numbers people keep coming back to. Reports of around 137,000 unsold jars and alleged sales averages near 26 units a day became major talking points online because they transformed the discussion from image problems into serious commercial questions. Those numbers are not just random internet jokes or social media memes. If accurate, they represent real production costs, real storage expenses growing over time, and real pressure on the business operation itself. A rebrand can change packaging and marketing direction, but it does not automatically solve the much bigger question of whether enough customers actually want the product at the scale needed to sustain the company long term. The As Ever project was widely expected to become a meaningful revenue stream connected to the Sussex's larger financial picture in Montecito. The brand was supposed to help support the expensive realities tied to security, staffing, property costs, and their broader lifestyle. But based on the available reports and public discussions surrounding the launch, critics argue the business does not currently appear to be operating anywhere near the scale many originally expected. The gap between what this brand reportedly needs to earn and what it currently appears to be bringing in is massive, and a chaotic week filled with criticism, mockery, and confusion does not exactly help close that gap. At this point, the biggest question is no longer just whether the campaign can be cleaned up or adjusted. The real issue many critics are focusing on now is whether the brand actually has a strong enough foundation to survive long term. Does it have a clear identity? Does it offer something unique enough to stand out?
Right? Meghan Markle's brand is basically in the gutter. It's in the seventh ring of hell at this point. You'd have to be insane to buy her jams, jellies, and dog biscuits. Imagine you're trying to put food on the table for your family. You're trying to prepare breakfast for your kids before they go off to school. Are you going to say, you know what, let me get Meghan Markle's jam and jelly and spread it on toast? Nobody is thinking that, okay? Go get you some Smackers or Smuckers or whatever it's called and call it a day. No one wants Meghan Markle's jams, jellies, and dog biscuits.
And most importantly, does the polished image match the actual customer experience people receive once they buy the product? Because curiosity alone can only carry a brand so far. Big celebrity launches almost always attract attention in the beginning. People buy once because they're interested, because they want to see the product for themselves, or because they're caught up in the headlines. But food brands do not survive on curiosity forever. What keeps a company alive long term is repeat customers, people coming back again and again because they genuinely enjoy the product, trust the quality, and feel the experience matches what the branding promised them. That's the part that turns a launch into a sustainable business over months and years. And that's where the serious questions around as ever are now starting to land. Nobody doubts that the public is curious. The attention levels alone prove that. The bigger concern is whether that curiosity is actually turning into repeat purchases strong enough to support the business at the scale reportedly required. Critics argue the current numbers being discussed publicly suggest that conversion may not be happening fast enough. If people try the products once but don't feel motivated to buy again regularly, the entire business model starts facing pressure very quickly, especially when inventory and production costs are already reportedly so high. A rebrand can absolutely help if the actual product underneath the new image feels compelling and worth the premium price point. But if consumers are still asking the same basic question, why should I buy this instead of cheaper alternatives already available everywhere else? Then changing logos, visuals, or website designs may not solve the deeper issue. And after everything that unfolded this week, that question suddenly became a lot harder for the brand to avoid. The typo, the borrowed kitchen, the promo video that sparked confusion and online jokes instead of making people hungry, the Mother's Day product rollout, the palace bullying allegations suddenly returning to headlines at the worst possible time. On their own, none of these issues probably would have destroyed the brand completely. But all of them crashing together in the same week created a much bigger picture, one that made the entire operation look like it was under very real pressure. And according to critics, the mistakes themselves were the kind, strong, professional teams are normally supposed to catch long before launch day ever arrives. That's why the backlash grew so quickly. People weren't just reacting to one bad moment. They were reacting to what looked like a pattern of rushed execution, mixed messaging, and a brand struggling to keep control of its own image in public. Then there are the numbers everyone keeps coming back to. Reports of 137,000 unsold jars, alleged daily sales averaging around 26 units. If those reports are accurate, critics argue the timeline becomes difficult to ignore, especially for products with expiration dates attached to them. And after a week filled with negative headlines, social media mockery, and growing public doubts, many people are questioning whether the situation improved at all, or whether the spotlight only made the challenges bigger. Now the attention shifts to what happens next, because the coming weeks will likely determine whether this was simply a rough launch period or the sign of a much deeper commercial problem that rebranding alone cannot solve. So here's the big question. Do you think As Ever still has a real path toward becoming a successful long-term brand? Or has this week created damage that goes beyond what a new logo, polished campaign, or website relaunch can realistically fix? Drop your thoughts down in the comments below, because this conversation has seriously exploded online. And if you want the full picture on these stories as they continue developing, make sure you subscribe